think it would happen to someone else, our mother, our grandmother, our aunt, our neighbor, but we don't think we're going to be the ones who experience weight gain, hot flashes, sleep problems, anxiety, irritability, vaginal issues. We just, it just hits us upside the head. And then we go and look for answers. And the answers are that's just normal aging.
Yeah,
But
good luck.
yeah, we know once we hit it ourselves, we're like, no, no, this is not normal. This came out of the blue. Hey, welcome back to the Pretty Well podcast. I'm Lisa Smith, and today you are going to love our guest. I'm talking with Dr. Christina Ensman. And Dr. Ensman is a board certified gynecologist, certified menopause practitioner, and functional medicine expert, specializing in women's health in midlife. She combines evidence-based medicine with root cause approaches focused on hormones, gut health, metabolic health, and the vaginal microbiome. Through her clinical work, education platforms, and speaking engagements, she helps women navigate menopause with a science driven, personalized approach to health and longevity. Welcome, Dr. Christina. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. I'm excited too.
We were just chatting off air and talking about how much we have in common, and especially in our passion in this space, in this field. Tell me, what drew you originally to the OB/GYN field and specifically to the functional medicine aspect of it?
Well, there are like 20 years or so between these two decisions, maybe more. But
Right.
OB-GYN, I mean, that's just the best specialty. You have primary care, you have endocrinology, there is, reproductive health, so delivery. There is in Germany breast cancer, so oncology actually belonged to gynecology, and that's surgery. So for me, there was never any question. That's what I wanted to do. Now comes the functional medicine part. So I
Yeah.
did the conventional for a long time. And I was a minimal invasive surgeon. So this was all, that was very fun and engaging, and it was a very great job. And then, however, as we all, I think most of us, we approach midlife and then suddenly we realize whatever we were taught that doesn't really give us enough explanations. And again, I was a certified menopause practitioner, so this means that's not functional medicine. That's actually really it's a certification you get as a board certified physician from the North American Menopause Society, which is a great society, really trying to help women since the Women's Health Initiative study. I was prescribing hormones, all these things, and seeing many menopausal patients for a good while. And there were some patterns that just were not explained by none of the conference I was going to. And I loved my Menopause Society conference, always great information. But the question always was like, well, we are gaining weight. Data might say, well, this is only an average for like 6 pounds or so, but really that's an average. And for the women itself, it's not an answer. It's like, why? What can I do? The other thing I was seeing, GI symptoms, not even mentioned in any conventional guidelines. And of course, then these heart palpitations, sending women to cardiologists in panic and getting worked up. So all these things. And then I myself, I entered menopause rather early because all of the stress
Mm.
that we all go through, from the high achieving jobs to the separations and the kids and the dogs, that's all applied to me. And then at that point, I was like, okay, but now this is not good enough of an answer. I want to really know more. And this is when I transitioned to function. Let's say it like this. I say it's my functional medicine toolbox that when I'm out of good answers, then that's where I'm going to look. And this is how this became more and more gratifying and made more and more sense to me. So that's what I'm doing most of the time now. I still do a little bit conventional gynecology. I have 1 day a week, and where I also see my vulvovaginal patients, which is another passion of mine. I really like all these vexing vulvovaginal conditions, I want to say. And unfortunately, gynecologists are not well trained, and women get often these cookie cutter treatments repeatedly, and things get worse and worse. So that is the other thing I really love to take care of.
Mm. That is so helpful because you're right. We enter into this stage of life, and so many of us experience a flood of symptoms that we weren't prepared for. We always think it would happen to someone else, our mother, our grandmother, our aunt, our neighbor, but we don't think we're going to be the ones who experience weight gain, hot flashes, sleep problems, anxiety, irritability, vaginal issues. We just, it just hits us upside the head, and then we go and look for answers, and the answers are that's just normal aging.
Yeah,
But
good luck.
yeah, but we know once we hit it ourselves, we're like, no, no, this is not normal. This came out of the blue.
Yeah.
So, in your experience, what are symptoms that are called normal, but are actually signs that our body is under chronic stress and it's struggling? What are those signs? And then what are some of the things you found to do about it?
Yeah, I really think a big one that I see is fatigue, deep
Mm,
fatigue. I think women suffer the most from this fatigue that doesn't go away. And sure, we can say you need to sleep more, but this is all already disrupted. We don't sleep because we don't have that progesterone and GABA modulating effect anymore. So we don't sleep. Then our stress axis gets disrupted. We are tired throughout the day, or we are okay during the day initially still, and then at night we are just exhausted and then can't sleep. So I think sleep is a big one, and fatigue. Then gut issues. That is really common. And I encourage everyone, if you have gut issues, please go to the gastroenterologist first. I want everyone to have a colonoscopy. I want to make sure there's nothing going on that needs to be addressed from a conventional standpoint. But then if they find nothing, which is most of the time the case, then I say this is a functional problem. And then palpitations, again, please go for a cardiologist. Because again, heart attacks and cardiovascular disease is still one of the major killers for us women, and it's under-recognized. But most of the time, it has to do with the changing hormone environment. Then urinary tract infections. We always are being taught that the genitourinary symptom of menopause, which is like the vaginal dryness, sex with intercourse, but also urinary symptoms like recurrent urinary tract infections, urinary frequency. We are always taught this is like more the long-term effect, like if you have been in postmenopause for a good while. However, in reality, I see it's one of the earliest signs, even women's like in their early 40s. And initially, I thought it's mostly women who hadn't born children vaginally because they haven't gotten the stretch. These are really the ones who get earlier pain with intercourse. But the urinary tract infections, I see that really very early. And again, not acknowledge that this is actually one of the first signs that there's a transition. Of course, we have the hot flashes and all of that, but most people know about that. But I'm really intrigued by these other ones where people get no answer.
That is interesting. So you're finding that very often the vulvovaginal, the urinary
Mhm.
symptoms, they precede all
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
perimenopause and menopause symptoms. So you're seeing things like UTIs,
Mhm.
vaginal dryness, pain with intercourse, maybe some even atrophy starting, vaginal atrophy, or is that a little further down the road?
I don't see it. It's not something I can see already, but functionally it's already there. That's what the patient complained about. So I think that's fascinating. And how do we explain it? I guess just overall, even in perimenopause, we usually think we have a lot of estrogen because it's very roller coaster. I guess overall, this estrogen signaling just becomes so unreliable that these vaginal tissues are indeed one of the first ones kind of to put out the SOS sign, like something is up here.
That's really a hard road to walk when you have all these other things coming at you. These things tend to happen to us, as you said at the beginning, when we already are juggling so many things. We're juggling probably one of the most challenging times in our career because we're so much further than we have been in the past. And we still have great goals ahead of us. We have lots of family things going on. Like you said, possibly separation, divorce, empty nesting, aging parents. So there's so many. And then our body is changing, our face is changing. We're like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
insane. So
When your teenage kids are pointing out that you get wrinkles or there's a hair on your chin, right? And you're like, that's not helpful. That's
I remember when mine went like, "What's this?" And it was that peach fuzz starting. I was like, "That's enough. That's enough. All
get
right.
up.
Now, do you think I don't see all these changes? I do not need you to put a magnifying glass on them." When you start to see all these things coming, what is the role you see in elevated cortisol due to all the stress that we're talking about?
Yeah, I really think at this point, I think it's a big driver of most of the symptoms or an amplifier. And that like, it took me a long time to understand that, what's really going on. But
Mm.
now I kind of have really thought my way through that. So what's really happening is transition is, we always think like, well, this perimenopause is like the hormones go away, right? Maybe we know that they're initially doing a roller coaster, but it's really a metabolic and this neuroendocrine event. So really driven by estrogen is very important for insulin sensitivities. It's important for fat distribution. It's important for inflammatory tone. It's important for mitochondrial function, fatigue. And it's also really important. It does this buffering for our stress axis. So when we have stress, it might be good stress, our regular work schedule that we might be enjoying before, this buffering goes away. So now this cortisol, the stress hormone surge is higher and doesn't go away like it used to. So now we have this continuous chronic stress signal. Usually we are that's supposed to be tiger and then we run and then the tiger is hopefully gone. Now we have this continuous stress signal. And this is now really causing that all these systems, our insulin resistance, the inflammation, the stress response, our sleep, all that shifts really at the same time. And this makes it so complex. And this makes it that sometimes not just giving hormones is just not really enough. So this is how I see it these days. And then, of course, as you said, everything in midlife comes together. There's one thing I want to mention to stress. It's not just everything. It's my other favorite topic, over exercise. Yeah. They're the ones of us we don't exercise. Fine. These are these ones that's also stressful. And then are the ones who are always driven. Many of my patients, very health conscious. They know how to eat. They have tried caloric restriction and they know how to exercise, particularly the runners. They get in trouble in perimenopause. And it's really hard to convince them that they need to back down with their exercise. So but I'm trying to tell you that's also stress, tremendous stress on your body. And sometimes I think some wearables can be helpful to really understand how you need to recover.
And it's interesting how the sleep plays a role in elevated cortisol, the poor sleep and the stress and all the other pieces. How you mentioned gut issues too. How does that play into some of the gut symptoms you're seeing?
All right, here comes that other piece in the puzzle. The gut it's a bidirectional relationship, the gut and the brain. We say when we are sad or we don't want to eat or we are stressed, we don't want to eat. So the gut communicates with the brain and vice versa through the vagus nerve. So if there is increased cortisol, that actually can cause gut dysbiosis and then gut barrier breakdown, and then we get food sensitivities. On the other hand, if we have dysbiosis in the gut because the estrogen-dependent bacteria move out, like the estrobolome, and then not so good bacteria move in because stress, lifestyle, not the right nutrition. So that dysbiosis and that inflammation also then, on the other hand, causes raised stress levels. So it's a continuous vicious cycle that needs to be disrupted, really. And the estrobolome, as you know, it's like this, I call it these estrogen-dependent bacteria. They love to live with and around estrogen. So once estrogen goes away, these bacterial tribes move out. And we have good data that actually the gut microbiome for us women after in postmenopause looks more or less like the one of men. There's nothing wrong about it. It's just important to understand how much estrogen really does affect. And when these tribes move out, the estrogen-dependent bacteria, other bacteria move in, and this comes from food, from the environment. But if we are dragging along with us what I like to call like the health luggage, like our health baggage, you have maybe underlying autoimmune, we are very stress sensitive or stress reactive, we already have insulin resistance, or maybe we have some genetics that are not in our favor. All these things, they're going to show up now in midlife. So it's not like people come to me and they think, oh God, I'm in postmenopause and now I'm getting sick. I'm aged. And I'm like, no, 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 no. So estrogen is just that hormone that we get for 30 years during our reproductive functioning that makes sure we can reproduce. So it's like this fire extinguisher. So whatever we have lingering, underlying issues, it's coming the fire. Once it goes away and now these things show up, this is for us really the moment to intervene, to have a really close look, not to close our eyes anymore what's going on, but to really say, okay, let me take this on, let this rebalance so we live our next 50 years really healthy. And that's what nature wants. Nature tries to protect us in a certain way. It's like you reproduce for 30 years and then there are younger women coming up, they can take that over. Because just imagine what kind of work that is. Every month we produce this eggs. The egg get this whole hormonal cycle going, our entire body, from our mood to our mitochondria, everything really needs to get working really hard. So this is just something that when we are midlife, nature says, this is it now. You have other great things to do. Let's stop that because this is just not good for you anymore. So I think that's how you should see it. And I love being in postmenopause. I always say that every morning I wake up and this is the same Christina. It's not like I'm happy one day and angry. No, it's always the same. It's good, people. That's what I really want people to understand. There is nothing bad about that. It gives you so much more energy for other things.
Yes, first of all, how encouraging is that? That is a completely different message than society tells women in midlife. In midlife, we're told kind of like you're washed up and I'm with you. I'm here, the rally cry. Your best days are ahead of you. You've
Yeah.
got so much wisdom and experience and knowledge now and confidence. Now just put it out there in the world because you are meant to have an impact. So I, first of all, very much appreciate your message. And I want to circle back to what you were saying, because what I heard you saying is when the buffering effects of estrogen starts to go away, what we find is some of these things that were under the surface that have been under the surface for a long time and they were kind of masked in a way, or
Yeah.
they were reduced by the effects of the
Yeah.
estrogen. Now they're like, poof, now they're rearing their ugly heads. And instead of women thinking, oh my gosh, I lost all my hormones. Like you said, I'm getting old and now I have all these problems. I hear you saying they were kind of there. And now
Yeah,
it's your body saying, okay, you need to pay attention to this. That
that's correct. You need to pay attention. And if you don't pay attention in midlife, your body is going to do things you're not going to like. So you have to
Mhm.
pay attention.
So what do you like to do then? Let's take it to the next level. If someone comes in and they're saying, I have all these gut issues now and all this inflammation and I'm irritable and I can't sleep, where do you like to start?
Yeah. Well, there's no one size fits all. It depends how old is that woman? Is she still cycling? Where are we really? So it's someone who just can't sleep. They still have their cycles. I often give them just bioidentical progesterone. And it's also, they have no other issues. They don't want to start digging deep. But so they want,
Right. Right.
and I'm, well, if we can make you sleep, probably we're going to fix 50% of all your other issues. So that's how I like to start.
Yeah.
So on the other extreme, let's say someone really comes in, they have no menstrual cycles or always skipped a lot. They have tremendous hot flashes. They have gut issues, all of that. I definitely do first a very comprehensive regular blood work. So I really look at metabolic health. That's first. The first, second, and third is really insulin resistance that I always look at because the insulin resistance is what's going to drive our cortisol level. It's going to drive our belly fat. It's going to drive that we can't sleep, and it's going to drive our hot flashes. But most people don't understand that this insulin that's going to release if we eat carbohydrates and we are insulin resistant and it's lingering around forever stimulates the thermoregulatory center in our brainstem. So what usually estrogen used to plug in and calm it down, insulin plugs right in and gives us hot flashes. So that's the first thing I do. Often, and you might have found this too, once you make them sleep and get rid of the sugar on these blood sugar spikes, many things really calm down. If they have really bad gut issues, that's of course anti-inflammatory diet. They have to quit the sugar, and
Mm.
then we go anti-inflammatory diet initially. So we remove the main allergens and see how that goes. Many people, and you might know that just with eliminating gluten and dairy, which are just the most common and most irritating foods. And I'm saying, hey, this is not bad for your 20-year-old son. I don't believe that if he has no issues. But in menopause, perimenopause, this is just one of these most irritating molecules that just makes it through this gut-brain barrier first thing. So I
Mhm.
do that. And then, of course, we have to do more than I'm a big tester, right? Like you probably too, their patients are coming, they have done this or that, and they're very educated and they read social media and they did the basics. And that's when I'm like, let's quit guessing. I like to test. And then I have a whole battery of functional medicine tests. I like the GI map, for example, and food sensitivity testing. I want to see what is that food stuff that irritates your gut right now. So we can eliminate that and I can have time to heal your gut. And then we look at the gut health. I do hormone testing, I do metabolic hormone testing, I'll check the cortisol awakening response. So a very sensitive test for the stress axis because stress is such an abstract term and patients, they don't believe that until I can show them what's really going on. And then it helps me. I have to know what stage of stress axis dysfunction you are. Do we need to calm you down? Do we need to build you up? So I think data is a big one. And for fatigue, I do like micronutrient testing. So I really like NutriEval tests. I like to look at mitochondrial health, more and more oxidative stress, because that seems to be really, once I can see that, then I really know how to help someone through that fatigue. Where is that button that I have to push or support? And then, of course, I do some environmental toxin. That's again, it depends on the woman. Environmental toxin and genetics can be very interesting. So we know which are that genetic, I don't want to call it baggage, but it's everyone has our little weak point where we have to pay attention. So that's how I approach that.
I so appreciate how you customize it. There is some low-hanging fruit, and I hear you saying that. First of all, let's just get the metabolic health
Yeah.
calmed down and moving in the right direction. Let's just, as a blanket, you can go anti-inflammatory type of a diet until you dial it in with the food sensitivity testing. But I really love that you are personalizing it to that degree because that's where we see people get true life change and they feel so good and didn't realize they could feel quite as good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I just had someone who said she didn't even know how bad she felt all the time until she now feels like normal now. And that's when I'm happy. This is gratifying that it's a lot of work personalizing these protocols, but that's when medicine just is fun. That's when it's like, oh, but this is really worth it.
This is what it's all about. This is why you're passionate to do what you do. You talked through these different, very important foundational pieces, and you did early on about the sleep mention bioidentical progesterone. How do you feel about BHRT in general? How do you feel about estrogen, the estrogen patch, or compounded estrogen? Um,
Yeah. I love BHRT. I don't think everyone needs it. I have been around long enough, terribly. So we went from everyone needs hormones to no one needs hormones to now, and now it goes again this other extreme way. I feel on social media because we have all these companies, they're pushing their products, and now the warning was removed. And there's now this very strong message that if you are not in BHRT, you're going to age and get osteoporosis and get, this is now when patients come to me and crying because they miss that window. And then I have to say, well, look, we are not all getting osteoporosis because we're not on hormones. Yes, osteoporosis is something, and I pay a lot of attention to that, but it's not that women who are not on hormones are going to get osteoporosis. De facto, I have plenty of patients who have been on hormones and still get osteoporosis. So it's a piece. So BHRT is works very fast for hot flashes. That's what it's approved for. And this is where we have good data. This is where we data. It really helps great for hot flashes. Also really fast, I think much faster than people are saying. So really after a week, people, if that's what you're missing, that is the one piece, it's going to help. I don't think everyone needs that. You don't have to. I love to work with women who are saying, I don't want the hormones. I want to get, again, I think it's a natural process. And if we put all the other puzzle pieces in the right place, you should be feeling as good or even better. I always stress with my patients that this is a band-aid solution, literally, because I like the patches. And you want to be in a place whenever you decide you want to discontinue BHRT. Again, we don't have to strictly anymore, but most of my women, I think at some point they might just be over it or forget it, or if then I want you to be at a better place. I want you to be able to wean it. So let's work at the metabolic health. Let's work at the underlying stressors. Let's make sure your bones are really going to be protected, that you're on an alkaline diet and there's nothing else that's going to tear up your bones. So that's my approach. Someone wants hormones, you have no contraindications. Please, I think everyone has the right to try that. But I always make clear, if you're not fixing, they often have pre-diabetes. I'm explaining what is really the underlying drivers of hot flashes, because these are the women, if they're pre-diabetic, these are the ones they want more. We start them on hormones, they do okay for a little bit, then they have hot flashes again. I need more estrogen. And that's when I'm like, no, let's see what's like. And I do blood levels. And just because if someone is on hormones, I want to make sure we're actually getting them in a bone protective range. And that's where I follow the data from Precision Analytics from the Dutch test. And I'm pretty sure at some point that's going to leak into conventional medicine because they have really good data, what is actually bone protective range of estrogen. So I make sure we are getting them there. So because I don't want anyone to just be on something and then think it helps, but then it really didn't do nothing. So yes, and I like the patch just because I can measure that estrogen level whenever they come to the office. The patch is always on 24/7 the same. So I like that. I also think it helps me knowing symptoms. If you get a gel in the morning and then we have flashes in the afternoon, it gets kind of too complicated. I'm like, let's do a patch or the vaginal ring. I like that too, the systemic ring. With testosterone, I'm always being asked about that. It's not my first line. I'm not following any proprietary approach to add testosterone right away, just because if they're insulin resistant, if they're inflamed, that testosterone is going to be converted right into more estrogen. So I don't want that. And also because most symptoms can really get better if you fix your metabolism and your stress. That's when we get sexual desire again. However, if I do testosterone, that is the one thing where I gave into pellets. I just think if you want testosterone because you have low libido and you're really suffering from that, and we have tried everything else and it affects the relationship, then I'm just think you get better levels with that. I want to know, does testosterone really help you? And then when I give them the compounded greens, so then I'm like, no, let's see if this is really what's going to help. And then I want to, again, like with a patch, I want to make sure I give you a dose that's going to get you in a nice range. And then we see if this fixes what you like to have improved.
And I hear what you're saying. You gave into pellets. Pellets are one of those things that, they're just, I think they're overused
Yeah.
just and I find that some of the providers who give them maybe aren't as good and as nuanced as they should be. And then women end up so frustrated because they're having symptoms that are not what they were anticipating. So I
Yeah.
appreciate your approach. It's very well thought out. I have found with clients that BHRT falls into three camps. Either some women get it and they're like, oh, yes, it took care of everything. And I believe, like you, that some of those foundational pieces are in pretty good shape. The gut health is better than maybe it had been. The metabolic health is more balanced. The stress, they're doing some stress management and improving sleep. So that's when BHRT, in my experience, has hit the sweet spot. And people are like, yes. But then there are two other opposite ends. I've heard women say, it's doing nothing for me. Or as you said, it kind of helped and then it stopped. And you've explained it beautifully with that insulin piece. Then
Yeah.
there's the other end of the spectrum where I've known a couple people who've said it sent my anxiety through the roof when I went on the patch and bioidentical progesterone combined.
Yeah.
What is happening there when they're like, oh, I can't do it. It's just sending me through the roof in terms of anxiety and palpitations and
Yeah, serotonin. So serotonin is that feel-good hormone, right? This is the one that we address when we give most antidepressive medications, try to keep that serotonin level up. That's really how it works.
Mhm.
However, serotonin is not like all thing in our body. It's a Goldilocks. It's not like more is more and less is less. So if we don't have enough, we are sad. And if we have too much, we can get anxiety. So what
Huh.
does this have to do with estrogen? Well, estrogen is actually keeping that serotonin level up. In a way, it's also because I don't remember all the pathways. It's on the neurotransmitter way, but also in the gut, because most of our serotonin is metabolized in the gut.
Mhm.
So again, there's good data that actually shows that you can, so there's correlation or association between depression and gut dysbiosis. So just to enforce that little link. But
Right.
yeah, so basically, if we have a woman, most of us are going to be like, we need more serotonin. So we are going to feel great on estrogen patch. However, there are some, and I had these patients, very small percentage, but you're right, they get anxiety. So they basically have a high serotonin tone. Let's say it like this. So now if we give them, and they actually do pretty often very good in postmenopause. But if we give this estrogen, they do exactly the opposite. Also, progesterone, usually calming. So if we have neuroinflammation, it can do the opposite. Also, then this communication is different. So yes, so that happens indeed.
And it is kind of confusing, when that happens because you're like, okay, well, it's the opposite of what a lot of people experience. So that is really helpful. So if a woman has been on an SSRI for years for dealing with depression, anxiety, and then she has a really good baseline or has felt really good for 20 years and then adds EHRT and then the anxiety goes crazy, uh, I'm wondering, what does that mean for the SSRI? Could it be reduced possibly if they still wanted to use the BHRT for hot flashes and for the other effects that it brings, helping with vaginal dryness and all of that?
So the question would be, well, can it be reduced? Or can we wean in the BHRT? Usually I like to give them a good dose and rather wean down, particularly if they're highly symptomatic and they're young in menopause. However, the sensitive people, sometimes it makes sense to wean it in. So you start with the tiniest patch we have and get the system used to it and see if
Yeah.
that works better for them. If someone sees me for the functional rearm and they have fatigue and all kind of issues, if I can, I don't want to say it loud, but I like to wean them out of the SSRI. If someone has terrible depression, I'm not going to touch that. But the threshold to get an SSRI prescribed is so low, really. They get it for all kind of things. And the other thing I would love to talk about, which is really what your experience with that. Many of these perimenopausal patients, when they come with brain fog and can't function, they're now prescribed stimulants on
Oh,
Adderall. I get so mad.
my
Get
gosh. I've
so
only seen
mad.
it talk about throwing fuel into a fire.
Burning through the adrenal. That's how I call it. And then they come with fatigue. And I'm like, oh, yes,
You're
this is
on
not, please,
opposite. Yeah.
anyone hearing this, please do not go for that. Really, this is not going to be good. Let's
Let's
work on really what's underlying.
Yeah, let's talk about why. So for our listener who's like, "Oh my gosh, that's me." Let's talk about the why behind that and why that maybe wasn't the best choice that practitioner offered.
I explain it like this. It's a stimulant. So we are talking about perimenopause. The cortisol tone is already up. The stress axis is under pressure. And the stimulant, what it does, people know it when they're honest, you're wide awake suddenly. It's basically your adrenal glands are trying to keep up with the demand. Adrenal glands, they produce DHEA, a type of testosterone that naturally declines with aging, but it's a precursor of our sex hormones. So now when we are in perimenopause, it tries to increase the production to actually help us out with some of the estrogen during that transition. So, however, that DHEA or the adrenal glands, they produce cortisol. So, cortisol and our sex hormones also have the same precursor hormones, the same building blocks. So, if we are stressed, our body is going to say, well, you don't need that sexual function. I need you to stay alive.
Yeah.
So, we call it the cortisol steal phenomenon. Kind of
Mhm.
funny. I like it. That means body steals all the building blocks to make cortisol and keep us going. And there's no sexual function left. So, this is, hello, low libido. And now basically the Adderall really, squeezes that cortisol axis. Like really, it's like you have a whip now, someone who, slaps you all the time. You feel good. And these women, they get more and more fatigued. These are then coming and say, can't even get up without my Adderall. So then they make it through the day, they take their 1 or 2 doses, and then it's over. They are so exhausted, and at night they can't sleep because this is really causing the worst. And it accelerates that stress axis dysfunction.
Mm.
So yes, this is why and I don't even know about the micronutrient deficiencies. I haven't even looked in that. Well, actually, we can think about that because it's turning on that stress axis. We are going to go through amounts of B1, B6, B12, magnesium. You can't
Yep.
even take that much as you're going to need. So yes, please don't do it. It's the worst Band-Aid solution you can really go for, and you're going to be worse off than before.
Such a great point. And then it drives the point home that it's so aging. It speeds up aging so much because those adrenals can't keep up. And when those can't keep up, think about the effects on the mitochondria. They switch out of energy production purely into survival and defense mode. And there's
Yeah.
just no way to keep renewing. The body's in total survival mode in that case. And the accelerated aging that would come along with that is just none of it's worth it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, you're an expert in the vaginal microbiome. What do women not get about that, other than we talked about UTIs being precursors, saying, "Hey, we've got a red flag happening here." What else do we not get about that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot dismissed by gynecologists for no reason. I think one thing I would like to mention, so that vaginal tissue is very responsive to vaginal estrogen. And I need to clarify, this is not hormone replacement therapy. So vaginal estrogen, we consider it topical. There is no hormone level that you can measure, and even some practitioners don't understand that. So you can take vaginal estrogen preparations until the end of your days, literally. And sometimes I use it to augment systemic HRT. If you take a good amount, depends on the dose. Sometimes what we give systemically as a patch is enough. It reaches the vagina at some point. But sometimes if I have them on lower doses, then you might still need vaginal estrogen. That's perfectly fine. And the other thing is, if the gynecologist prescribes estrogen, he's on the wrong track. However, they often don't give enough. So they tell you to pee full to the outside of the vagina twice a week. Well, that's not going to get you nowhere. Okay.
That's a
And then
great.
he's like, yeah, that coming doesn't do nothing. I done that, didn't. I'm like, yeah, you didn't take enough. So I always say you need to, particularly if this tissue is very atrophic, we call it, okay, also very dry and tender, or when you already have your penis doesn't even go in because outside it's so dry and tight. Yeah, very aggressive. So it's really, I like the cream initially, and you really have to take this every night for 3 weeks. Up estrogenize that tissue really hard. You want to slap that estrogen on there, and then you space out 2 to 3 times a week. So this is how I start, particularly someone who has outside discomfort and inside. If penis doesn't go in, that's the first thing, or painful, and the other thing is the deep thrusting. So one is more the outside, the other one is inside, and some women, particularly after C-sections or they haven't had vaginal deliveries, they have this even earlier. So that's that. And then there are different preparations. So if you hate one of them, because cream can be messy, I get it, there are so many things out there. There are vaginal tablets. Tiny little tablets. There's nothing that's messy. You just stuff it in the vagina. It's really easy. There's no technique behind it. I'd say it this way so people know it's nothing
Can't mess it
complicated.
up.
Really just get it in there somehow. So there are vaginal tablets that you take 2 to 3 times a week. There are vaginal suppositories. They have more like a fatty texture that gives you nice moisture. There are little capsules. There's a vaginal ring. There's a ring that is just for the vaginal atrophy. And then there's another ring that has a higher dose that actually works also for systemic HRT, which I love. So plenty of formulations. Most of them are estrogen. There is one formulation out there that's actually vaginal DHEA. So we have mentioned DHEA before. This is this adrenal precursor hormone. However, we can also give it in the vagina. It's converted to estrogen. I like that preparation a lot. And here's the reason. If you have intercourse with the estrogen, it's not that your partner's penis is going to fall off if he gets some estrogen on there. But it's always, what do I know? I don't know how often my patients have intercourse. If I give them vaginal DHEA and it's like a nice fatty suppository, it first works as a lubricant and it's good for the partner too. So this is what I like about the vaginal DHEA. And that's the reason why. So
So
yes, but many of formulations, and again, you just need to really give that vaginal tissue enough. And that's really most of these I can really fix if I hit them hard enough.
that is really helpful information. It is quite discouraging when you're not getting the right answers.
Yeah.
And then you're like, is this the way it's going to be forever? I'm maybe only halfway into my life, this is not working. So those are great
Yeah.
suggestions
I
that,
would love to add something to that. This
yes.
was this vaginal estrogen piece. So our tissue in the vagina, that mucosa, becomes more sensitive, lacking estrogen. So now all your hygiene routines you have been doing for 50 years and were working for us,
Mhm.
you're going to get most likely skin irritation. So very common bar soaps. We'll call like some names here, but also the organic bar soaps. So bar soaps have soap scum that feeds the wrong bacteria. So
Oh my,
so if you have recurrent BV, it's never going to go away if you're not stopping the bar soaps. And this ritual, like 3 times a day, we shower and we make this foam, right? And we think we're doing something good. And it also doesn't matter if you don't apply. I don't apply it down there. It just doesn't matter. Our skin is a whole integument. It doesn't care if you put that stuff on your breast or on your vulva. Then what's particularly bad is antibacterial bar soaps. Then Dove and Dial. Oh my, people love that because it has this lotion effect. Well, what's happening really, it's stripping the natural oils off your skin and puts artificial fatty acids back on your skin.
wow.
So this is feeding again anaerobic bacteria. Never going to get rid of this bacterial vaginosis. So that's really important. And then other things, when I see yeast infections, women who really clean very thoroughly down there, right? It starts to irritate. And then we always think, oh, we have to clean more. It must be dirty. That's when you disrupt the cell-to-cell adhesion barrier in these vaginal tissues. And now you get yeast infections. And then you can also create chemical sensitivity. So sometimes some of the preparations even I use, if you're really sensitive, you don't even tolerate this anymore. So then we have to really thinking of sealing that. I call it, has no name for it yet. And I don't want to, leaky vagina is kind of a bad name, but it's kind of, I think of it like it's the leaky gut, literally. And I'm sure it's going to be a thing and we're going to give it a name. But basically, there is a breakdown of this defensive mechanism of the vulva vagina. So I'm trying to say, be very gentle. Get an organic shower gel that you just apply with your hands to, I always say, the stinky areas under your armpits, and then maybe very gently with your hand outside of the vulva, rinse it off. Less is really more in perimenopause because you're going to get so many additional pieces of differential diagnosis. And we think it's one thing, but we actually have 3 different things. You don't want to all accumulate this. Be gentle to your body. That's my big ask.
I didn't even know about bar soap. I mean, I had no idea. Are there any other great points like that that you like to share that people think, oh my gosh, I never thought of that? So, personal care products, ditch the bar soap, get an organic shower gel that has
Very gentle. No,
no,
no loofah, no. Always people are like, I'm always like, look, if you're a construction worker, sure, you can shower and you need, but most of us are not. So I know we like to shower because it makes us feel good. Very gentle product with our hands applied. That's really all. The other thing, moist wipes. I've
mm,
not found one that is not irritating. Even some of the brands that are, no one needs moist wipes down there. It's really, you get sensitivities. Products with lidocaine that we get in the pharmacy, like these wipes or creams with lidocaine to make the itch go away. That's like the most common local allergies I see. Reactions to lidocaine. Terrible. And then, oh, there's something else I see. Probably I'm going to get hate mails from the company. So, you know what is really a common cause of contact allergy? Perineal pads. And they fume out some chemical compounds. And one of the brands it's always. I see so many young women with this terrible outbreak in the vulva, and until I'm asking them, when does it happen? Oh, always after my period. I'm like, what are you using? And it's actually known in dermatology that some of these perineal pads. So really go for something organic with less plastic. I made miracles for some of my patients because they get creams and cortisone, and I'm just like, when is that happening? You can see the outline sometimes even from these pads. So
oh my
yes.
goodness.
So
So always pads. That's good to know. They are very plasticky. I can't imagine the chemicals that are
and
in
there's again, oh, there's like this other material, what they put in there, the chemicals. So yes,
there.
it's a known thing in specialty dermatology, actually. So
That's great to know. This is just a wealth of information. Dr. Christina, how do you work with people? How do women find you?
well, I am currently, as I'm online, I do some vulvovaginal work online too, but most functional work is really online, drchristinaensman.com. If you're in Maryland and you have vulvovaginal symptoms, I do see patients right now in Glen Burnie in Maryland. I have a little sublet there currently. I might be moving around with that one, but right now I'm there. I see them Friday mornings, and I do also some studies, microbiome studies that I would love you to participate. It's free for you, where we really collect more and more information about women with lichen sclerosus, recurrent BV, vaginal pain syndromes, post-radiation. Yes, I want to see you.
Oh, that's excellent. Okay. And how do they reach you through your website, drchristinaensman.com?
Yes, just write me an email if there's anything unclear because I'm still building things. So contact at drchristinaensman.com. Just write me an email, tell me what you need, and I tell you where's the right place.
That's fantastic. I will have all of that in the show notes. You've given us, this is information you just don't find. So thank you for sharing
It
all
was
your
fun.
wisdom. It has been. Yeah, I've loved it. Thanks for joining us today. And guys, thanks for listening in. I'm sure you have so much to take away. First of all, go ditch that bar soap as soon as you stop listening today and grab a great organic shower gel that's not scented. I'll be back next week. Until then, stay pretty well.
Good, Lisa. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.